Welcome to my vertical obsession, and today we are talking about my duplicated husband, which is on ReelShort. And this one stars Haley Lorelei as Esther, Rhett Wellington as Carl / Killian, Alexander Watts as Sharon, Michael Vicario as Victor Lewis. And I say that I'm super excited to talk about this one because this one was just so good. I love this one so much. It was a great vertical for sure. Okay, so the synopsis is for 5 years, Esther has been trapped in an abusive marriage. Her husband Carl cheated on her, was violent, and indirectly caused their daughter's death. On their 5th anniversary, another brutal fight ends with Carl's accidental death. In shock, Esther buries his body in the backyard. But the next morning, Carl appears again, alive and acting like the loving man she once knew. As his behavior no longer matches the abusive husband she buried, it begins to wonder, did Carl return from the dead, or has someone replaced him? So my little overview that I wrote about this was that after Esther thought she had killed her husband the night of their wedding anniversary, she walked in the house the next after Esther thought she had killed her husband the night of their wedding anniversary. He walked into the house the next day as if nothing happened and acting completely different. For 5 years, her husband Carl had been nothing but cruel and abusive to her throughout their marriage, and now he's caring and protective. Esther starts to wonder, is this really Carl, her husband, or someone completely different? Carl continues to work to save Esther from everything being thrown at her, like Sharon, who is Carl's assistant and mistress. She and Carl had a plan to take Esther's company, but now Carl is doing everything he can to protect it and help Esther. He's also trying to put distance between him and Sharon, which makes Sharon suspicious. Esther still doesn't know why Carl is acting this way, but it gives her hope that maybe the man she once loved has returned to her. She's also not sure she can trust it. It all comes to a head when it turns out the events of the night did happen, but it wasn't Carl at all. It was Carl's brother, Killian, and he wasn't dead at all. He was going to destroy everything Carl had and get Esther back. Carl wasn't about to let that happen. He was going to do everything he could to protect Esther, even if it meant killing his own brother. Now Carl and Killian must face off, but who will be victorious? So as I said, I love this. I thought it was so great. The acting was amazing between both Rhett and Haley. They both did such a great job, and that's two of the things that I wrote down, especially for Rhett. I said he freaking knocked it out of the park with this role. He played both Carl and Killian so well. Up until you saw Killian with Carl, you really didn't know if Carl was good or bad. He really did such an amazing job playing both the good and the bad guy. I loved every minute of it. His acting was top notch, and he was so perfect for the role. While I hate watching him play the bad guy or the villain in series, because I do. I hate him playing the villain. I love when he's the one that they end up with, but he plays a villain good. And that's what I said. I know he plays them well, which makes seeing him play the nice guy or the hero so much sweeter. And what I said for Haley was that she did a really good job of getting in the role of Esther. She was a traumatized wife. She was questioning everything, whether or not she was hallucinating, whether or not this was really the person that she married, or if he was someone completely different, not to mention everything that the Carl that she married had put her through. You could definitely see that in Esther's interaction with Carl, who was trying to be sweet. So it's she did this really great job of playing this traumatized wife and the victim of abuse in this series. And she also brought a strength to Esther to show that she was a survivor and she could get through things and she could trust someone again. So I really loved both Haley and Rhett in these roles because they did such a great job. Their acting was great, and I felt that they were perfect for these roles. So one of the other things I had said was, when I first saw the trailer, I was wondering if it was going to be a twin, and it was and that it was one twin that Esther ended up killing, and then the other one came in, because that's the way it kind of felt like they were throwing it when you looked at the trailer that, oh, they're actually twins, but she didn't know that he had a twin. And as you watch the series, you realize that that actually was kind of true, but not at the same time because he wasn't technically a twin brother. Carl and Killian were not twins, they were just brothers. And Carl was transformed and given surgeries to make him look like Killian, to make them look like twins, but they weren't really twins. So it was kind of an interesting twist of how they did that, that it wasn't really an official twin, but a deeper, crazier plot that was thrown in there originally by their father. So it was very interesting. One of the other things that was there for Carl and Killian was the fact that they both felt that they lived in each other's shadows, and it kind of made the struggles that they had between each other that more interesting, I'd say, because it was always Carl felt like he was living in Killian's shadow because he was made to be a backup for Killian if anything was to happen to Killian, or if there was someone to go after Killian, Carl would be the replacement, basically, or the decoy. I think it was kind of put out there is that he was supposed to be the decoy so that way Killian could be protected as Golden Son. So Carl always felt like he was given the short end of the stick so that way they could kind of cater to Killian. Whereas Killian felt that he was in Carl's shadow because Carl got to live out in the open and got to embrace life and not hide in the shadows because Killian was sent away to school. He was kind of hidden away as a way to protect him. So it was a very interesting dynamic between the two because they both felt they were in each other's shadows. And that is what I said, Carl believed he was in Killian's shadow because he was meant to be a stand-in, that he was never the one his father loved, was a second thought. Killian felt he was in Carl's shadow because Killian was shipped away and felt forgotten. He felt that Carl got more and got the love Killian never could get. That turned Killian into the monster that he was because he was seeing all this joy and happiness that Carl was seeing and getting that Killian couldn't get. It's like, so when they showed Killian seeing Carl, it's like Carl was talking to Esther and they were flirting and he was basically getting the things that Killian never got. So it kind of turned him into this I'd say jealous monster in a way. And he let that darkness control him. Whereas Carl kind of stayed grounded and he never lost his compassionate nature, especially when it came to Esther. Because Esther was kind of his grounding, even though he was taken away from Esther for quite some time, she was still someone that kind of kept him going in the hopes that maybe they would see each other again because he always wanted to protect her. So it was definitely layered in those, and I wanted to be able to kind of like write a bit more. It's just words were escaping me. So I kind of like, this is what I ended up with, that to kind of differentiate the two characters. And to be honest, I actually wrote this after I'd kind of written everything down because I was looking over another review that I was writing and kind of going over the coloring and the tones, being like, I kind of don't do that with series anymore. I don't notice it as much unless it's like really in your face. And so I kind of went back to look at this series because I wanted to see if there was a difference between Carl and Killian and if you could kind of tell which one was which, especially once you've seen it, be like, okay, I can definitely tell that this is who it is. And I'm not 100% sure if this is fully accurate, but it's kind of one of the things that I noticed a little bit. And if it was done this way, then I think it's great because, again, color schemes for characters is very big. And it's a very big thing that doesn't get noticed as much unless you're really diving into it or watching it over and over again. So sometimes it doesn't get as noticed as much. So it's kind of trying to pay attention a little bit if I could, to kind of add some other ways to deep dive into these series. So when I was looking over the tones and the coloring, like I said, I was trying to see if there was a difference between Carl and Killian. And one of the things I did notice, or I felt like I kind of noticed, was that Carl had a bit of a softer tone to him. And that kind of helps with the representing of him being the nicer brother, and Killian had more darker tones to him, which shows him as the evil brother. And I had made mention that yes, they were a little bit more similar, so that way it didn't give away the twist of them being brothers too fast or too easy, but it kind of a slow notice as the series goes on. Kind of noticed that Carl's tones got a little softer as the series kept going, which kind of helped you see that it really wasn't the same person that Esther married. So it kind of differentiates them a little bit. That's what I kind of noticed. And again, I don't know if that is actually how they did it, and I'm kind of hoping it is, but it was just one of the things that I noticed with the series when I went back and kind of rewatched. But again, I kind of want to try and, when I can, deep dive a little bit more into things like this, because I love being able to notice things like this in series. Sometimes it's a lot easier to just see it. One of the times that I noticed it was like with the Savannah and Blake series that I had done earlier on in this podcast with, playing by my ex's alpha brother. It's like you could definitely tell there was a color scheme going on with those characters. It was very prominent and very like in your face that you could see each character had its own color scheme. So trying to see what I can kind of figure out in all these series going forward. But going on to the overall thoughts, I said this series was amazing, really had you wondering, what was happening along with Esther. It did such a good job of giving you just enough suspicion, but also making you think you could figure it all out. You knew that the new Carl wasn't Esther's husband, but you couldn't quite figure out, was he a twin? Was he someone made to look like Carl? Or was Carl, or maybe Carl with this whole new personality? Again, from the trailer, I figured it might have been a twin brother. As the series went on, I started doubting that. The more Esther talked about him being the boy she knew in high school, I started to think that it was the boy and not her husband. They were two different people. When everything finally came out, it turned out that they were brothers. That Carl was the boy Esther loved, and Killian was the man she married just pretending to be Carl. I didn't expect it to turn out that Carl was made to look like Killian. I figured they were twins, but they actually weren't. They were just made to look like twins. That way Carl could be the stand-in for Killian, so he wouldn't get hurt. When it came to Killian, you had to wonder, was he still alive or was he dead? You slightly had to figure he was still alive because it was a little too easy if he was dead. It was just a matter of how he would come back. Would he walk in and just take back his role as Carl and Esther's husband, or would he try and take out Carl so he could have Esther back? Not that Esther would want him back after all he put her through. Where would that leave Sharon? This series did a good job with this thriller, and I loved every minute of it. It started out really dark, but it was the catalyst to why Esther killed her husband. She was trying to free herself from the abuse and torture she had endured over the last 5 years. She not only felt it was the only way, but she was also trying to protect herself as he could have killed her. So that's kind of like the overview that I had written down for this whole thing, is that, as I said, it was a great series. I loved every minute of it. It's just also one of those series that I was like, okay, what's going to happen now? What's going on? I was definitely on the edge of my seat for the whole thing. And it was just superb. And so the overall scoring that I gave for this one, which, as I said, I don't tend to really give high scores, but I gave this one because it was just so good. So the overall score is an 8.8 out of 10. It's like I said, it was just so good. Acting was great. Storyline was great. It really kind of sucked you in and made you question so much. And I just thought it was so well done. And I loved everything about it. It was just, it deserved the high ratings for sure. Fantastic. And I would definitely recommend it and say, watch this one. I mean, I love Haley and Rhett as actors to begin with. So this one was just amazing. So amazing. So as always, would love to hear your thoughts on the series, what you did like and what you didn't like. If you had any other thoughts about the series, like if they could have done something different, if you also noticed anything color scheme wise for these characters, things like that. Kind of love to hear. And if you're enjoying this podcast, please be sure to leave a review. Love to hear your thoughts on that too. And this has been My Duplicated Husband. I'm your host, Megan. This is My Vertical Obsession. And until next time.